In the spring of 1986, a diver named Kihachiro Aratake dropped off the southern edge of a tiny Japanese island into waters so blue it looked fake. He wasn't looking for ruins. He wasn't looking for treasure. He was looking for sharks, hammerheads, the ones that swarm this stretch of the Pacific every winter because Aratake ran the local diving club, and hammerheads were good for business. He kicked down through the current, 20 feet, 40 feet, 60, and then the blue in front of him hardened into something with edges, straight edges. A wall flat, sheer, and taller than a house rising out of the seafloor as if someone had poured it there. Below it, a staircase. Beside the staircase, a terrace. Beyond the terrace, another and another, marching down into the dark in perfect right angles. Aratake stopped kicking. He hung there in the water, and by his own account, he forgot to breathe. Because what he had just swum into wasn't a reef. Reefs don't have 90-degree corners. Reefs don't have steps you could climb. What Aratake had reached, at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, off the last speck of Japan before you hit Taiwan, looked for all the world like a sunken city, a monument the size of a 10-story building carved from a single mountain of stone sitting under 100 feet of seawater. He surfaced. He told people what he'd seen. And when the footage of that descent finally reached the outside world, it did something that a piece of rock has almost no business doing. It split the scientific community in half. It launched 30 years of expeditions, and it forced serious people to ask a question that should have been impossible. Because if this thing was built by human hands, then somebody carved it before it went underwater. And the water in front of Aratake had last been dry land more than 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years before the first pyramid, before the wheel, before writing itself. So how do you build a monument in a place that, according to everything we think we know, had no one advanced enough to build it? That is the mystery of the Yonaguni Monument. And I'll warn you now, if you came here for a clean answer, you may leave with more questions than you arrived with. This is Motech. Yonaguni is not an easy place to get to. It's the westernmost inhabited island in all of Japan, closer to Taiwan than to Okinawa, a green dot of about 1,700 people, wild horses, and cliffs that fall straight into some of the fastest current in the region. If you wanted to hide something from the world, you could do a lot worse than the water off Yonaguni. For years, local divers had traded rumors about strange shapes on the seabed near a point called Arakawabana. Fishermen talked about the ruins, but rumors are cheap, and nobody had put a name or a camera on them. That changed with Aratake. Once he understood what he was looking at, Aratake did the only sensible thing. He went back again and again, and he mapped it. A main terrace, a grand staircase. Long straight channels cut into the rock like drainage lines. 2 enormous stone pillars standing side by side. And running around the whole formation, a flat ledge almost like a path or a road that circled the structure as though it were meant to be walked. Word climbed the ladder from the diving community to the universities, and eventually it reached a man who would spend the next quarter century of his life obsessed with this site, Masaaki Kimura, a marine geologist at the University of the Ryukyus. Kimura came out to see the rumor for himself. He would go on to dive the Yonaguni Monument more than 100 times. And what he concluded after those 100 dives was not what anyone expected a cautious university geologist to say. But we'll get to Professor Kimura and the sentence that made his colleagues wince a little later. For now, put yourself in the water. Pause for a moment and imagine you are Aratake, on that first descent, the first modern human to truly see this thing. You drop past the top of the structure at about 5 meters down, shallow enough that sunlight still cuts through in blades. The first thing you feel is the wrongness of the angles. Nature loves curves. Nature loves the random. But everywhere you look here, there are flat planes meeting other flat planes in crisp corners, like the work had been snapped off with a chisel and a straight edge. You drift down the face of the main terrace, and it keeps going, a sheer wall dropping away beneath your fins into water so deep the bottom fades to black. You reach out and touch it. It's sandstone, hard and cold, and it's smooth. You follow a ledge and come to the steps, a run of enormous stone stairs, each one nearly a meter tall. Far too big for a normal person to climb comfortably, almost as if they were built for something larger than us, or built for a purpose that had nothing to do with walking. You turn a corner, and the current pushes you toward two pillars standing upright, side by side, evenly spaced. You pass what looks like an archway. You glide over a flat plaza wide enough to hold a crowd. And the whole time, one thought keeps drumming in your head. Who did this, and why is it under the ocean? Then you rise back toward the light, and you realize the truly disturbing part. You've just toured what looks like a piece of architecture, and there is 100 feet of seawater sitting on top of it. Which means whoever your imaginary builders were, they weren't diving down here to work. They were standing on dry ground. And the last time this rock saw dry air, the world was a very different place. Here is where it gets strange. Let's deal with the size first, because the numbers matter. The Yonaguni Monument is not some pebble a fisherman tripped over. The main structure runs roughly 100 meters long and 60 meters wide, and it rises about 25 meters from base to top, the height of a 10-story building. The full site sprawls across an area of around 300 by 150 meters. This is a landmark. If it were on land, you'd see it from a mile away. Now the age, and this is where the ground starts to move under your feet. The rock itself is ancient beyond comprehension. Sandstone and mudstone of the Yayama group, laid down roughly 20 million years ago. But that's the raw material. The real question is, when was it last above water, where human hands could have reached it? The answer comes from the ice. During the last ice age, so much of the planet's water was locked up in glaciers that the oceans sat far lower than they do today, and this whole area was dry. Connected in a land bridge, you could have walked from here toward Taiwan. As the ice melted, the sea came up and swallowed the coastline. Geologists estimate that the top of the Yonaguni Monument last stood in open air somewhere around 10,000 years ago, possibly more. Sit with that number for a second. 10,000 years ago. The pyramids of Giza are about 4,500 years old. Stonehenge, roughly 5,000. If the Yonaguni Monument was shaped by people, those people were working twice as far back as the pyramids in a chapter of human history where the textbooks say we were still hunter-gatherers with stone tools, incapable of anything remotely like this. So, which is it? Did nature carve a 10-story staircase by accident? Or did someone build it, and then the ocean rose up and buried the evidence? The Yonaguni Monument had no intention of answering. It only wanted to ask more questions, and there is no single written record anywhere on Earth of who might have built it. I'll tell you exactly why that silence matters later in the video. For now, there's a more immediate riddle to solve. How were the Yonaguni Monument's features made? This is the heart of the whole debate, so let's look closely. The formation is covered in features that, on land, no archaeologist would hesitate to call man-made. There are the terraces, broad, flat, level platforms stacked at regular intervals. There are the staircases, with treads and risers cut at consistent heights. There are walls that meet the floor at clean right angles. There are long, narrow channels running through the stone like carved gutters. And there are what some divers swear are post holes, small, round, evenly bored recesses, the kind you'd drill to sink a support beam. Kimura measured all of it. He argued the geometry was simply too regular, too repetitive, and too intentional to be an accident of erosion. Water and time, he said. Don't make 90-degree corners on demand and then line them up in rows. But here's the counterpoint that keeps this a mystery instead of a headline. The rock these features are carved from is layered. Bedded sandstone and bedded sandstone does break along flat planes and straight fracture lines. Snap a slab of it and you can get a surface as flat as a tabletop. Stack those breaks and, in theory, you can get something that looks like steps without a single human ever lifting a tool. There's one more wrinkle. On land, when erosion carves flat surfaces out of bedded rock, it tends to do it unevenly. The softer layers wear back faster, the harder ones jut out, and you get a ragged, weathered profile. But several of Yonaguni's terraces are described as almost unnaturally level, edge to edge, as though the surface had been deliberately dressed flat. And the inside corners, the places where a wall meets a floor, are the hardest thing of all for erosion to explain, because water tends to round corners, not sharpen them. A clean interior right angle, cut into stone, is close to a signature of a tool. Yonaguni has more than one. So which force did it, a chisel, or 10,000 years of the Pacific? Hold that thought, because it only gets harder. What are the carvings? If the steps were the only thing down there, we could maybe write them off as a geological coincidence. But the Yonaguni Monument isn't just angles. It has figures. There is a formation divers call the turtle, a raised shape, roughly star-shaped when seen from above, that from the right angle looks unmistakably like a giant stone tortoise laid into the rock. In several cultures across this part of the world, the turtle is sacred. Coincidence? There is what some researchers describe as a carved face, a large head with recessed features, compared by a few to the great stone heads of Easter Island. There are markings on the walls that Kimura interpreted as deliberate. Lines, grooves, even shapes he suggested might be a primitive form of writing or symbol. And there's the detail that gives even hardened skeptics pause. Off to one side of the main structure sits a rock that appears to have been moved, a boulder resting in a position that doesn't match the bedrock around it, as though it were quarried, shifted, and set down deliberately. Nature fractures rock in place. It doesn't usually pick a slab up and relocate it. To the man-made camp, that single displaced stone is worth more than all the terraces combined, because it hints at intention, at a decision made by someone who wanted that rock there, and not where the ocean would have left it. And then there's the arrangement of the whole thing. The way the terraces, the road, the twin pillars, and the plaza sit in relation to each other, which to Kimura's eye read less like a random rock and more like a plan, a ceremonial complex with a stage and steps and a processional path. So, did an ancient hand carve a turtle and a face into the living rock at the bottom of the sea? Or is this the oldest trick the human brain knows, seeing meaning in noise, the same instinct that finds animals in clouds and faces in wall sockets? That's not even the strangest part. Where is the debris? Here's something that troubles both camps. When you carve a monument this size out of solid rock, whether you're a Bronze Age mason or the ocean itself, you produce an enormous volume of waste. Broken slabs, rubble, sediment, the leftovers of everything that used to fill the spaces that are now open. So where is it? The terraces are strikingly clean. The channels are clear. If 10,000 years of erosion had been randomly smashing this rock apart, you might expect the whole site to be buried under a chaotic pile of its own debris. Instead, the flat surfaces stay flat, the corners stay sharp, and the layout stays legible. And think about what building here would have required if people did it. There was no electricity, no modern machinery, no steel. 10,000 years ago, the tools of the day were stone, bone, and wood. To cut clean terraces and meter-high steps out of solid sandstone with equipment like that would have taken an enormous, organized workforce, people who needed to be fed, housed, and directed on a coastline that has since vanished under the sea. That's not a lone genius chipping at a rock. That's a society. A society with surplus, with planning, with the kind of coordination we normally associate with the first cities, except the first cities, according to the textbooks, were still thousands of years away. If Yonaguni is real, it didn't just leave us a staircase. It left us the shadow of an entire people we have no other trace of. Defenders of the natural theory say the strong currents here sweep the loose material away, and the currents genuinely are ferocious. Defenders of the man-made theory say that's exactly what you'd expect if someone deliberately cleared and shaped the site. Once again, the same evidence points in two opposite directions. Once again, the monument refuses to choose a side. And there's a detail here that most people miss. When the sea rose and drowned Yonaguni, it should have gone to work on those sharp edges immediately. 10,000 years of saltwater, storms, and typhoon surge is more than enough to round off corners, sand down steps, and turn crisp geometry into a shapeless lump. Coral should have colonized it. Marine growth should have blurred it. And yet the lines are still there, still legible, still sharp enough that a diver in 1986 could recognize a staircase at a glance. Whatever this thing is, it has resisted the ocean for 100 centuries, and that stubbornness is a mystery all its own. Of course, the mysteries don't end there. In fact, we're about to look at the two biggest questions of all the two that have kept this argument alive for nearly 40 years, and that no expedition, no sonar map, and no dive has ever managed to close. Okay, so here's where we are. We've got a 10-story stone structure at the bottom of the Pacific. It has terraces, staircases, right-angle walls, channels, twin pillars, a road, and shapes that look like a turtle and a face. It sits in water that was dry land somewhere around 10,000 years ago, and the same features that scream man-made to one expert scream natural to the next. Now, the two mysteries that make all of that even worse. The first is the one I promised to come back to: the silence. In nearly 4 decades since Aratake's discovery, divers and scientists have gone over this site again and again. And in all that time, not a single artifact has ever been recovered from it. No pottery, no tools anyone can agree were tools, no bones, no inscription that every geologist accepts was carved by a person. Nothing. If a civilization built this, they left behind the largest object imaginable and, at the same time, absolutely nothing you could hold in your hand. How does a culture capable of a 10-story monument vanish without leaving so much as a broken cup? And the second, larger mystery, the one that swallows everything. Why is it underwater at all? And who could possibly have been there to build it? Because if the answer is people, then those people were alive and organized and carving monumental architecture at the tail end of the last ice age, a time when, according to mainstream archaeology, no such civilization was supposed to exist anywhere on the planet. Yonaguni doesn't just pose a puzzle. If it's real, it moves the starting line of human history back by thousands of years. No one knows for certain. All we have are theories, which brings us to the second part of this video. Let's start with the theory that the establishment finds easiest to defend, that the Yonaguni Monument was never a monument at all. Its most prominent voice is Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, who dove the site himself and came away unconvinced that any human had ever touched it. His argument is elegant, and it's the reason this theory is so hard to knock down. The rock, he points out, is a layered sandstone that naturally fractures along 2 sets of planes: horizontal bedding planes, laid down when the sediment settled 20 million years ago, and vertical joints, where the rock cracks under stress. Break a rock like that, and you don't get chaos, you get steps. Flat horizontal surfaces, separated by sheer vertical faces, repeating at regular intervals. The terraces, Schoch says, are bedding planes. The walls are joint faces. The staircase is just what happens when horizontal and vertical fractures meet in this particular kind of stone. The carvings, the turtle, the face, the writing are natural scratches and shapes that our pattern-hungry brains assemble into meaning. In other words, everything Kimura sees as design, Schoch sees as geology doing exactly what geology does. And crucially, this theory explains the biggest mystery for free: there are no artifacts, because there was never anyone there. But it gets more interesting. At the opposite extreme sits the theory that made Yonaguni famous and made a lot of careers uncomfortable. Kimura, after his 100-plus dives, concluded the monument was man-made, a complex of stepped pyramids, roads, a castle, even what he described as a stadium and monuments, all shaped by human hands, and later drowned by the rising sea. And some who followed him went further still, tying Yonaguni to the legend of Mu, a lost Pacific continent, a Pacific cousin to Atlantis, said to have sunk beneath the waves and taken an advanced civilization down with it. To this camp, Yonaguni is the physical proof of something humanity has whispered about in flood myths for millennia, that there was a golden age before recorded history, a people who could build in stone on a monumental scale, wiped off the map by rising water at the end of the Ice Age. The reason we have no record of them, the theory goes, is that the record is exactly where you'd expect, at the bottom of the sea. And Kimura wasn't just gesturing at vibes. He pointed to what he read as tool marks on the stone, to symbols he believed were carved, to the way features he called the loop road and the main terrace related to one another with a coherence he argued no random fracture could produce. He built scale models, he published papers, he staked the back half of his career on the claim that this was architecture, and he did it knowing exactly how much ridicule the word Mu would earn him from his own profession. That's a strange thing for a cautious geologist to do over a pile of rocks. It's a breathtaking idea, and Kimura believed it to his bones. Hold on to it, because we'll come back to it at the very end. A middle path argues Yonaguni was real and man-modified, but not a lost super-civilization, just people working with what nature gave them. In this version, Ancient inhabitants of the region found a natural rock platform that already had usable flat surfaces and straight fractures, and they enhanced it, squaring off what was already squarish, cutting steps into existing ledges, shaping the turtle, and turning the whole outcrop into a ceremonial or religious site. The sacred turtle imagery, the stage-like plaza, the processional road, all of it fits a ritual space. It's a tidy compromise. It doesn't require a lost continent, only a culture willing to carve, but not so fast. The most down-to-earth theory of all. Yonaguni was a work site. Maybe it was a quarry, a place where ancient people came to split usable slabs from the naturally bedded sandstone, which would neatly explain the flat surfaces, the straight edges, and the missing rubble. They carried the good stone away. Or maybe, when sea levels were lower, it was a harbor structure, or a defensive works, on what was then the coastline, the channels serving as drainage, or moorings. The flat top, a platform. Practical. Unglamorous. Possibly true. So, there they are, 4 theories. From nature did all of it, to a drowned civilization did all of it, with human hands doing some of it in between. Each one explains part of the monument beautifully, and each one, when you push on it, cracks. Let's do to these theories what the Yonaguni Monument does to everyone who studies it. Take them apart. Start with the pure natural theory, the strong favorite. It explains the steps, the walls, and the missing artifacts in one stroke, and yet, it struggles with the specifics. Natural jointing makes flat surfaces, yes, but critics ask why the features cluster and repeat with such regularity, why there appear to be symmetrical elements, why the twin pillars stand evenly spaced, and what to make of the reported drilled holes and the road that wraps the structure. If it's all random fracture, why does it keep landing on shapes that look purposeful? The natural theory answers the big question and stumbles on the small ones. Wrong, or at least not the whole story. Now the lost civilization theory, the crowd favorite. It's thrilling, and it collapses under the weight of that one brutal fact. Nothing. Nearly 40 years, hundreds of dives, and not one recovered artifact, not one accepted inscription, not one tool. A civilization advanced enough to raise a 10-story monument leaves middens, graves, pottery, something. Mu remains a story with no body. Wrong again, the evidence just isn't in our hands. The ceremonial site theory is more reasonable, but it leans on the same missing proof. If people carved this into a temple, where are the offerings, the wear patterns, the debris of worship? And the quarry or harbor theory is the most plausible of all, except it too needs tools and cut marks that everyone agrees are human, and those have never been definitively found. Do you see the pattern? Every theory that fully explains the shapes fails to explain the silence, and every theory that explains the silence fails to explain the shapes. For nearly 40 years, that's exactly where the Yonaguni Monument has held the entire world, suspended, unsolved, halfway between miracle and mirage. And that stalemate isn't an accident of laziness, it's a trap built into the location itself. You cannot excavate Yonaguni the way you'd excavate a site in a desert. You cannot brush away a layer of soil, sift it, and date what falls out. Every observation happens through a mask, in a current strong enough to sweep a diver off the structure, at depths that limit how long anyone can stay. The very thing that preserved the monument 100 feet of seawater is also the thing that has kept us from ever settling what it is. The ocean is both the vault and the lock, which is why for 4 decades the smartest people to look at it have surfaced with the same answer, "I'm not sure." But we didn't come all this way to leave it there, because if you stop fighting over the chisel over whether a human hand or the ocean cut those steps, and you step back and look at the one thing both sides are forced to agree on, something extraordinary comes into focus. Something that, once you see it, you cannot unsee, and it delivers on everything Aratake caught on that first dive. Here is what nobody argues about. Not Kimura, not Schoch, not a single geologist on either side. Everyone agrees the Yonaguni Monument is under 100 feet of water, and everyone agrees on why. Around the end of the last ice age, the great glaciers melted, and the oceans of the world rose not gently, and in places not slowly. The coastline where this rock sits went from open air to open sea. Whatever the monument is, it stood on dry land when the world was colder, and then the water came up and took it. That is not a fringe theory. That is settled science. Now follow that where it actually leads. Because that same rising sea, the one that drowned Yonaguni, didn't stop at one island. As the Ice Age ended, the oceans came up all over the planet. By well over 100 meters, whole coastlines vanished. Land bridges people had walked across for generations went under. Bays became open ocean. Somewhere on the order of 10 million square miles of dry land, an area larger than the continent of Europe, slipped beneath the waves in the span of a few thousand years. And here is the shock that Aratake's dive really uncovered. For as long as humans have kept stories, nearly every culture on Earth, the peoples of the Pacific, of the Middle East, of the Americas, of India, of the Mediterranean, has told the same haunting tale, that the sea once rose and swallowed the world, a great flood, a drowned homeland, a lost age that came before. We have always assumed those were myths. But the Yonaguni Monument is not a myth. It is 100 meters of stone that was dry when the flood stories say it was dry, and underwater by the time recorded history begins. Which means whatever you believe about who or what carved those steps, the single most important thing that diver caught on the seafloor in 1986 was this: hard, physical proof that the flood was real. The oceans truly did rise and erase a world. Yonaguni is a piece of that vanished world, frozen at the bottom of the Pacific, still standing exactly where the water left it. And that is what makes this monument the most important thing in the ocean. If it's natural, then it is a perfect 10,000-year-old snapshot of the drowned coastline our ancestors watched disappear, the geological receipt for humanity's oldest nightmare. And if Kimura is right, if human hands really did carve those terraces, then everything changes. Then there were people building monuments during the last ice age, thousands of years before history says civilization began. Then the flood didn't just drown a coastline. It drowned a chapter of the human story we've spent our entire existence trying to remember through myth, and the first page of that chapter is sitting under 100 feet of water off a tiny island near Taiwan, waiting for us to admit it's there. That's the part that should keep you up at night. Because we've only mapped the shallow ruins, the ones close enough to the surface for a diver like Aratake to reach on a single breath of curiosity. The vast majority of that drowned world, the 10 million square miles the ocean took, lies far deeper. In cold and dark, we've barely begun to explore. Yonaguni may not be the anomaly. Yonaguni may be the one piece that happened to be shallow enough for us to find. So, the next time someone tells you human history is a settled story, a neat line from cavemen to cities, remember the diver who went looking for sharks and found a staircase on the bottom of the sea instead. Remember that he reached the bottom of the Pacific, and what he caught down there wasn't a fish, or a formation, or even a monument. What he caught was a memory the whole planet has been carrying for 10,000 years. You've reached the bottom of the ocean with me. You've seen the monument. You've heard every theory. So, I'll leave you with the only question that still matters. If the flood was real, and Yonaguni says it was, then what else is still down there, waiting? Let me know what you think it is. This has been Motech.